Hey guys, welcome back to Dream Analytica. Today we're going to talk about the animus and anima in relationships and why it is so important to understand what the anima and the animus is in terms of your own identity and possibly your partner for a good general understanding of how your psychology works and how it can impact your relationship. For men, it's the anima, which is the feminine aspect within a man's psychology, and the animus, which is the masculine aspect within a woman's psychology. It's really important to learn how to identify those aspects within your own psychology. So I'm going to go over some of the things that you can do to figure out and identify those parts of your psychology and teach you how to identify those aspects in a man and woman in daily life and whether or not someone is possessed by their anima or their animus. So for men, the way you want to identify your anima is rather simple. So I always talk about how this channel is about dreams. So obviously you can identify your anima in dreams. So if you see a woman in your dream, she usually represents those feelings that you have or your pretty much unconscious function. So it does depend on what your personality type is as well in order to identify the anima. I say personality type, I'm actually talking about your cognitive functions. If you don't know what those are, I have videos that I'll post a description in the link for you to check out so that you can have a better understanding of how personality types is related to cognitive functions and how cognitive functions are related to analytical psychology and dream analysis. So the way a man can identify his anima is first and foremost through his dreams. The other way you can identify the anima in a man in conscious waking hours, depending on how a man behaves, is so normally he's going to project his anima. If he doesn't have understanding, and to be honest, most men don't actually realize they have an anima, he normally will project that anima figure outwardly. And this projection is usually in the form of an ideal woman. And so that's how a man actually falls in love. He is so caught by the image of that anima figure and he sees it out in reality, and that's the projection, and he falls instantly in love with that woman that has caught his anima projection. And women actually have an instinct or intuition about this. They know when they catch a man's anima, though they don't really know what the terminology is, but now you do. A woman does know when she catches a man's anima. It explains why women are a bit terrified of aging, because when a man projects his anima, he's essentially projecting a divine figure, an immortal figure, stuck in time. The man's ideal image of the woman doesn't age. She's this perfect divine being that he has projected onto a woman in real life if he's not aware of his own anima. And so when a woman catches that anima and she actually has an intuitive understanding that she has that man is in her pocket. But when they get into a relationship, a lot of things can happen if this anima projection isn't realized. First of all, the man will notice over time, inevitably, that his ideal image of the woman is starting to bifurcate or separate from the actual woman. The ideal image is no longer synchronized in harmony with the actual woman, because the actual woman is a human. So she's going to have a lot of flaws. She's going to age. She's human, so she has to take a shit. That goes through mood swings, that goes through emotional outbursts, which is so not in line with the ideal image of the woman. And then the man starts to pull away and lose interest. And that's what happens if the woman and the man don't recognize that the man has an internal anima, a feminine ideal goddess image. Now, and that's speaking mainly from a man who has not developed his anima, who has no understanding of his feminine side. He, like I said, he'll project that image onto a woman. In addition to that, a man who has an undeveloped anima will have many fantasies about women, as and this is where the whole idea of like men see women as objects. In a way, it's because of his undeveloped anima. He has this animalistic view that women are just these objects to procreate with for pleasure. A man who has an undeveloped anima will see a woman as this image. He doesn't see her as another human being. And especially as a man ages, his anima is essentially stuck in a form. This is why the older a man gets, if he hasn't developed his anima, the anima image in him is stuck in time. And there's like an inverse relationship. So as he gets older, his anima gets younger. And so now you can understand why older men are attracted to younger and younger and younger women. Naturally, if a man has a developed anima, he understands that that's just an image, and he can separate that image from the real person, his partner. The other thing to consider with understanding a man's anima is there's a correlation between a man's emotional range and his development of his anima. If he has an undeveloped anima, he usually has very little control over his emotions and his feelings. So a man is usually logos in front with eros in the back. Women, it's eros in the front and logos in the back. So a man who has an undeveloped anima will have very little self-control, awareness, understanding of his emotional range, his capacity for understanding his feelings. Normally what happens is that his feelings are repressed. And when you repress the feeling aspect, or the anima is equivalent to his feelings, she becomes very primitive. So what happens is, you should never repress anything, by the way, in psychology. It's very unhealthy. So what happens when he represses his anima, or his feelings, is they sort of will come out stronger as fantasies, moods, and these fantasies are linked with addiction to pornography, going to striptease shows and stuff like that, or outbursts of feelings. When you repress something, they don't disappear. They actually grow in size and eventually break through into consciousness. So that's why repression is so bad and dangerous. So if a man is more in tune with his feelings and has an understanding how to express himself properly, his anima normally will be more developed and more healthy. For a woman, there's also something you need to pay attention to if your man has an undeveloped anima, is that he will project that outward. And if you become disassociated with his anima image, then you can kind of understand where cheating may happen. He'll project that anima figure outward again and find it in another woman. And when he does that, then you already know what's going to happen there. So two things can happen in a circumstance like that, where a man finds his anima in another person. Two things will happen. So the first thing that will happen, that could happen, is that he realizes that that was just a fantasy, a projection of his anima, and realize that, oh, she has no content. She's just like, after he's done cheating, he'll just realize, oh crap, that was a mistake. She has no substance. The image of her and the actual person don't line up, and so he'll come crawling back and regret what he has done. The other thing that could happen, she actually evokes a rapid development of his anima, and he stays with her because his anima evolved with her. Kind of difficult to illustrate here, but it does speak of the problems that we have in relationships nowadays. It's because of this projection. As long as two people are able to understand their unconscious factors and reduce the amount of projections, if after the projections are taken back and there's anything left, then the relationship has a chance to succeed. Most of the time, after the projections are removed, they tend to split apart because there's nothing there. It feels almost empty. And this explains a lot of relationships nowadays in the man's perspective, if he has an undeveloped feeling side or undeveloped anima. So now I should talk a little bit about a healthy man. What does a healthy man with a healthy anima look like? I sort of mentioned it before about how a man with a healthy anima is able to separate the image of the idealized woman, which actually is a part of him, from the real woman that he actually has. The man is whole. He has the capacity to love the woman as a human being, with flaws and all, and does not expect her to be this divine image of what a woman should be for eternity. That is what a healthy man is able to do, who has a developed anima. We see couples in a healthy relationship for 20, 30, 50 years, and that is most likely because they have both developed their unconscious opposite aspects. There's another thing to note, which is very important, is the anima is actually another word for the soul. So when a man projects his anima, he's effectively projecting his soul outward. So he's looking for his soul outwardly. So this explains a lot. When a man projects his soul outward and into a relationship onto a woman, this is why you see men have such a very difficult time giving up on relationships, even if the relationship is long over. Even if he is abused, he is degraded, disrespected, a man will hold on to that relationship because he has effectively put his soul onto that other person. So that's his soul, and soul overrides any materialistic aspect. He will almost die for that relationship. It's because he has put his soul onto her. So a man has an incredibly difficult time letting go of a relationship if he has projected his anima onto that woman. That's why it's so important to understand your anima as a man, equally your animus as a woman. So those are some of the things that you can do to understand how the anima works in relationships. Now, for women, and this is speaking to men, so men can understand when his woman is in her animus or being possessed by her animus. Simply put, like let's say you have a woman in front of you, and if you want to know if she's possessed by her animus, one way to identify it is if she starts using generalized terms like we or all of us or anything in terms of a collective stance on an opinion. You can easily tell that a woman is in her animus when that sort of speech pattern comes into play, when she's talking about us against you. Like, who is us anyways, first of all? Second of all, it shows that that woman is not actually speaking from herself. She's speaking from something else. She becomes encompassed by her logos, her rationality, her cold logic. And the logic is not really grounded on anything real. Like it's so impersonal. It's so cold, detached from what is actually happening in the moment. That is how you can tell a woman is possessed by her animus. When she becomes cold, logical, her voice even starts to get deeper. When a woman's voice starts to get deep, almost like a man, that's a very clear indication that she's probably possessed by her animus. That's not for all women. Some women just naturally have deeper voices. You can also see it in their eyes. You can also see it in their stance. They become almost masculine. It's so obvious. You don't need like a reference guide to see that this woman is not behaving like herself. She's not behaving in her feminine power. Feminine power is about connection, about empathy, compassion, nature. When a woman is not those things and she becomes cold, hard, logical, almost idealistic, then you can tell that she's in her animus. The question is, what do you do when she's in her animus? You see it in old films like that. The husband usually has to slap it out of her and just like, stop talking like a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. You're not a man. You're a woman. Bring her back into her femininity. But what normally happens now in relationships, and you can see this inversion occurring everywhere, where the woman is becoming more masculine and the man is becoming more feminine, is when a man is not in his masculine, it evokes that response from a woman, where she becomes more masculine as a compensation for his lack of masculinity, and vice versa. The man compensates that with ever increasing femininity, and either one can trigger the other. Another way a woman can identify when she's in her animus is when she has detached herself in terms of feeling from that person, when she feels no attachment and everything is just logic and cold, and they usually come in thoughts. What does this look like in dreams? A woman is usually attacked by a group of men. That's how you can tell she's possessed by her animus in waking reality, if I were to interpret that dream. The masculine in her pretty much overrides the feminine in her. Her natural being, her individuality, her feminine individuality is being taken over by the masculine aspect. Like I said, it's a group of men, so that represents a collective idea, logos, a collective thought. It doesn't belong to her, it's outside of her, that is taking over her. So she'll have thoughts, really negative, pessimistic thoughts that seem to invade her individuality. And then she gets possessed and starts talking in such a way, gets hooked on collective ideas that she has not done the extent of really understanding what those ideas actually represent, and loses all feeling. That's how you identify when you're in your animus. And it's very difficult because I explained in a previous video why it's so hard for a woman to identify her animus, unlike a man who has more of an easier time identifying his anima. The reason is logos is responsible for dissection, the ability to discern between two things, to distinguish. But that logos is in a woman's unconscious. So unlike a man who is logos consciously, he's able to cut things up and divide them. A woman's unconscious is naturally the logos. How do you engage with your unconscious to divide itself? It's so difficult. And I have nothing but understanding and empathy for women and why it's so difficult. So one way to really get a good grasp on your animus is to have a loving partner that can essentially tell you when you are in your possessed state. It's very important. A woman can really develop her animus when she's in a relationship with the opposite sex partner, who can identify when she is in her animus state, saying, "You're speaking like a lawyer right now. You don't seem like your feminine self." And if the woman has the capacity to really accept feedback and criticism, then she has a really good chance of succeeding in developing her animus and identifying it. So like both the animus and the anima go through stages of development over a person's life. That's another important thing to understand, that it takes time and effort to develop these aspects of your personality, of your psychology, and it doesn't happen in a day. A man can greatly understand his anima by learning how to express those unconscious aspects of himself, such as feelings. Understand that those moods that come up within him belong to the anima. A woman can really understand her animus with the help of a partner or even friends around her to help her identify when she's being possessed by the collective, or if it's really her own feelings and her own thoughts and genuinely her own authentic personality that is shining through. So when a man and a woman both develop their anima and animus, there's now a chance for them to be in a healthy, stable relationship. Think of the image of yin and yang, where you have the black and the white, and within the black there's white, and within the white there's a black. It's like the anima and the animus within the unconscious of the individual, both in union. Essentially, if a man has developed his anima and he has not projected the divine feminine figure onto a woman, he's able to now be very independent, be fully in his masculine. What happens when you've integrated your anima or your animus? It actually enhances your masculinity and your femininity. So for a man, if he's developed his anima, she essentially walks beside him now and he's whole. So he doesn't need to fill that hole with another person outside. So he's confident in himself. He is in himself. What's happening nowadays is that men don't feel whole, so they try to find that other half of themselves outside. But that's wrong. She exists within you, and you have to learn how to respect that autonomous figure, that feminine figure within yourself, to become whole. That's your soul. And for women, if she has a developed animus, it is so powerful for a woman to have a developed animus, because that allows her to be in her femininity, in her feminine power. The reason I say that is because instead of the animus standing in front of the woman and the woman standing behind him, he now protects her from behind, like a guard, like a queen's guard, and support her through life, lift her up when things are going terribly wrong, give her the integrity, support, assertion that she needs to survive in this world. And she doesn't have to look for that in a man, and she won't project that. She will be able to respect masculinity for what it is, and equally the man is able to respect femininity for what it is. And that's what happens when both men and women have integrated their opposite aspects, their feminine and their masculine. And that's why it's so important for us, all of us, to understand that we have those psychological factors within us. And last but not least, it's important to note that the animus and the anima are autonomous factors. They operate independently of consciousness of our ego. That's why they can have such a big influence on our behaviors, make us do things that we never thought we could do. Much like the shadow, except it's a much deeper layer. So really think of the animus and the animus as autonomous figures that operate as a different personality that resides within you. And so you need to learn how to work together with your other half internally in order to have a healthy external relationship, and learn how to separate the divine from the human. And only until you do that can you have a safe relationship, healthy relationship with another person. So thank you so much for watching. I've also developed an application on the App Store where you can check out more information regarding analytical psychology. It's a really useful app. It teaches you all about the anima and the animus, pretty much everything that I have been talking about here, as well as information regarding typology. It teaches you as well how to interpret your own dreams. And I also developed a website where you can reach out to me, fill out a form, share your dream or not, and have your dream analyzed or your psychology analyzed. So thank you so much for watching.